Welcome to the Enchanted Sanctuary, the podcast for women ready to explore self-discovery and spiritual growth. Whether it's mastering your mindset, exploring energy work, or tapping into your intuition, this podcast is your go-to toolbox for spiritual and inner work. Think of it as a cozy chat with friends, where we celebrate the magic of growth and the beauty of becoming your true self. Each week, I'll talk with amazing women who share their personal journeys and the tools they've discovered to inspire and empower others. So if you're ready to embrace your path, discover new tools, and feel inspired, hit subscribe and join me in Enchanted Sanctuary. Hi, welcome back to the Sanctuary. Nikki here, and today I've got a very special guest with me. Her name is Lisa, and we've just been talking how we met, and that is through Emotion Code. It was through a conversation that we had on through an Emotion Code group that we both realised that we both see things during an Emotion Code session, which I think is quite rare for a lot of practitioners. And so we connected, and then it was during a conversation that I had on Facebook that Lisa just put a comment in, and something told me I need to get her on my podcast. And she's got so many interesting things to talk about, a really interesting story. So thank you, Lisa, for being here today.
Oh, Nikki, thank you so much for suggesting this, for inviting me. I'm super excited for this conversation. So I want to jump right in. Where do you want to begin?
Yes. Where would you like to start? Where did your story begin?
Oh, well, I think I'm one of those people who kind of ran from their own gifts and their own abilities my whole life. As a child, I was super, super highly sensitive, would hide behind my mom, would be that empath. I call it the non-functioning empath. I was the non-functioning empath that would pick up everybody's energies everywhere. I would cry during the Campbell soup commercials, with the little kids dropping their artwork in the puddle or whatever they were back when I was a kid. And it's been a real journey, but it wasn't until, so I would say I was always very highly sensitive and empathic, but had no understanding of any of it or how to control it until around, I would say around between 2012 and 2014, I began to really awaken. It was like somebody took the dial and turned the dial up. And there was a series of events that occurred that led me to eventually led me to Emotion Code, really, which is what happened. But yeah, I had my first Reiki attunement, I think around 2012, 2013. And I have to admit, my husband's a Reiki master and very brilliant, Reiki master, very gifted, but I did not feel the pull in that way. I now understand why. Like I love Reiki, but I didn't feel pulled to fully practice and immerse it. It did not awaken me. And then, a series of events, as I say, happened. The biggest one being the girl in the coma. And so after about a 2-year period where I was really starting to evolve and searching and searching and searching, I decided to really detox my body. So that was probably the first thing that occurred, was this massive detoxification. And part of that was really facing, I think, a little bit of the shadow work, right? The shadow stuff. And for me, that was, I had really had quite I don't want to even call it an addiction, but a dependency on painkillers, on over-the-counter medication. And then I began to read about, what that does to your body, the Advil in particular. I think at one point I was taking about 16 Advil every 24 hours for my physical pain. Ironically, my physical pain was actually my awareness of spirit energy, of, my spirit awakening. But I didn't know that. And so I spent decades literally running from it with multiple health issues that were not ever really able to be diagnosed. And then I decided, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I threw it all away. And I went through a massive detox. Now, for anybody who's listening to this, I really want to like time out here for a second and back up on that, because I'm not advocating anybody go cold turkey on any medication. I'm just one of those people that's kind of like all in or all out. You know what I mean by that? And so I threw the bottle away on January 1st and decided I wasn't going to take any more of Advil of any kind. And didn't realize until after I'd gone through this really heavy detoxing, like I'm talking curled up fetal position in bed for 6 months, that it's like detoxing off of cocaine when you are taking that much Advil. So what really happened was that turned up the dial. And it was shortly after that detoxification that I actually met my first emotion code practitioner. And he began working with me. And I mean, I was curled up in the corner in the fetal position. So I really understand what it's like when you're having a massive awakening. It's like somebody all of a sudden just takes you and cracks you right open. It's kind of like Humpty Dumpty sitting on the wall. And then you know what? All that happens, he falls and he gets cracked into like a million pieces. That's what happened to me. And I was curled up in the corner and I didn't know what to do. And my husband, you know, being a Reiki master, was doing everything he could to help me navigate the symptoms. He knew I was awakening, but here's what's interesting. My awakening was completely different than his. And I think that's a beautiful part of our story, is that we're all so unique and individual, right? We all have our own path, our own journey. And a lot of it has to do with our gifts and what we are here to bring to this world. And so his gift was to, as a medical medium, more in that line. That's not mine. That was not my gift. My gift was spirit awareness, and I didn't know that at the time. So an emotion code practitioner, he was very, you know, very gifted, very good at what he did. Began working on me. And in the first 15 minutes of, you know, he did a complimentary free session. I'd been referred. And so in that 15 minutes, he released, you know, some entity energy off me, which emotion code likes to call offensive energies. And I instantly felt the shift and was fine for about 2 days. And then it came right back. And so I started doing sessions with him regularly. And then it was sort of the light bulb kind of went off for me one day when he said to me, after, I don't know, probably, I would say anywhere from 6 to 10 sessions. And he said to me, you know, you have so many offensive energies. You have more offensive energies than anybody I've ever met. And that's kind of when it sort of stuck with me that there was something else going on. And it was about 6 months after that it was Christmas, and it was Christmas Eve. We were just winding down with family, you know, to do our Christmas Eve gathering with my kids and my husband, and my phone rang, and it was actually a friend of mine, an acquaintance for my previous business. And she was asking me for assistance with her order. And so I took her call because I had heard that her daughter had been in an accident. And so I wanted to, you know, make sure she was okay. There was just part of me that pulled to answer the phone on Christmas Eve. And so as I was talking to her, all of a sudden what happened was I felt her daughter standing right beside me. Her daughter had been in a coma at that point. And for the sake of this podcast, we'll call her Katie. Katie was 17 years old and had a head-on collision and was in a coma. And she'd been in a coma already for 3 weeks. And so, you know, we exchanged pleasantries, but Katie was standing right there, and I couldn't get away from it. Like, I was like, what is this energy? And I guess at that point, I still had a bit of fear in me around ghosts and spirits, and, you know, which I've come to realize that they show up to us in the way we in the way we expect them to. So if you have a lot of fear, if you believe what movies and TV and horror books and, all that sort of thing says about the things that go bump in the night, you got to peel that conditioning off yourself and get rid of those belief systems. But I was still in that little bit of fear, and I was having a lot of like being woken up in the middle of the night with a variety of, weird energies and things going on that I couldn't sleep. But Katie was probably the strongest one. And so that was Christmas Eve. And by January, I had so much physical pain in my body. I was in bed now for about 10 days. It took about 2 weeks for it to get so intense that I could no longer function. And then I spent about 10 days in bed. And I remember crying in bed in so much physical pain from head to toe. And my husband came in to console me, and and he didn't even know what to do anymore. And I'm crying out. I can't even begin to tell you how excruciating the physical body pain was. And I cried out and I said, if I didn't know better, I feel like I got hit by a truck. And he stopped in his
Wow.
awareness and he looked at me and he went, isn't that what happened to your friend's daughter? And so that began kind of the spirit journey where um, I reached out to a mentor, and she did a session and took me through a beautiful clearing. And for the sake of time today, I mean, we could spend an hour just talking about that. But there was a past life connection with Katie, the energy of Katie, and I immediately was transported into a battlefield. Felt like World War I, maybe. She was a soldier and I was a nurse, and I saw him giving me flowers and a ring. And then the next scene in my mind was me holding him dying in my arms and making this pledge that we will be together forever. Like, I will never leave you. I will be with you forever. And it was in that clearing and releasing of that energy that I began to realize my gift as what I coin or term a death doula. And so I began spending quite a bit of time focusing on connecting with spirit and connecting with people who have crossed over. The veil was completely gone, and I could have full on conversations with ghosts, we'll say spirits. Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. What a story. My goodness. So just backtracking, um, when you were growing up, did you know you were different to like your friends? I mean, obviously you were feeling a lot and trying to shut that down. Did you feel like you weren't like your other friends, or did you think
Oh,
everybody
my
was like
whole
you?
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, my whole life. And that piece of the puzzle didn't show up until 2020 for me, when my friend became interested in human design. And she was excited, and she wanted to run, she ran her chart and found out she was a generator, and she wanted to run my chart, and she was certain I was a generator as well. And she ran my chart, and unfortunately, the when you enter the information, you have the clock is 24-hour clock, and she put AM PM, but she didn't put it in as the 24-hour clock. So my first very chart that was printed was not correct. And so when she sent it to me and I read it, I was so disappointed. I was like, well, I don't know what this is and why she's so excited, because I don't relate to any of this information. And then I got looking at the birth date and time she put in, and was like, no, this isn't correct. So I went back to the website myself and redid it. And that's when I found out I was a human design reflector. And I spent the next 3 days crying, because everything that was written
Yeah.
about me, it was the first time in my life I felt like heard. I felt
Yeah.
validated as a person. And so it made so much sense about my childhood. And I could tell you stories of where I got in trouble because I got caught up in the energy, but it was somebody else's energy I was riding out. It wasn't my own energy. As a little kid, as an example. So over the decades, I can see where that transmutation energy that I'm now really known for. Like, I coined myself as a transmutator of magnitude because I transmute so much energy as a reflector. I'm constantly shifting dark, dense, heavy energy, negative energy to light very quickly. And when I do that, I burp and I cough, and there's actually a physical reaction. And so for years, the doctors were like trying to figure out what was going on with my digestive system and why was I always like having so many digestive concerns when it turns out that's one of the ways I transmute energy is this burping and all this other stuff that goes on. So when people come and do a session, I always say, well, be prepared because we're gonna have a lot of fun, but I'm also gonna do a little Tourette kind of thing, and and it's okay, but it's what happens when I transmute energy. So as a kid, I felt very different.
That's yeah, so interesting because it just goes to show that what we see on the surface, or like the physical symptoms, it's nothing to do with what's really happening inside. We can make so many mistakes on that. And then coming back to reflector, because I know very little about reflectors. So
Mm-hmm.
that I think you said before that you reflect
Yes.
the person's
Yeah.
energy.
Well, we're a mirror. We're definitely a mirror. So when you're having conversation with me, I'm mirroring you. So what happens in sessions often is I mirror the other individual's physical body pain. So clients are
Yeah.
always really shocked when I come on a video session with them and we're talking and within, a matter of a couple minutes, to be honest, sometimes it happens even like hours before or the day before or a couple days before, depending on the person, I will pick up on the physical body pain that's occurring. And I will mirror it. So if you're, as an example, if my right shoulder is sore, starts getting sore all of a sudden, I know it's your right shoulder that's sore.
Yes. So that's what
Yeah,
happens
it's kind of
with the
it's kind
cover
of
girl.
weird. It's kind of weird. Yeah, and we have open centers. So all of my in human design, all my centers are open, 100%, which is interesting because I know you've had your chart done, so you have some closed and fixed
Yes.
centers. Those
Yes.
are how you operate. So imagine having all your centers wide open. We are
Wow.
fluid. We are moving and ebbing and flowing with all of the energies around us all the time. And so for a reflector like myself, what's really important is to learn how to navigate those energies. And how I've done that is I've learned, and I think this goes for anyone, whether you're a reflector or not, it's important to identify what is yours and what is not yours. And I've gotten really, really good at figuring out, the thoughts, the pain, the belief systems, all those things, all of it that doesn't belong to me. I have been able to pick away at it and figure out, well, that's not my energy. That's somebody else's energy,
'Cause
not
that's a
mine,
really
and be able
important
to
point.
transmute it.
Because there's so many people, obviously with empaths and people waking up to realizing that they're empaths. That's a question that so many people ask is how do I know what's mine and what's somebody else's?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the areas. If I was going to say, why people come to me, when they book a session with me, I would say one of the biggest reasons they do come is that they are highly sensitive or empathic, and they're in what I call a non-functioning empathic state, which is where I was
Yeah.
when Katie, right, when I was connecting to the girl in the coma and telling her mom, that she's getting her first menstrual cycle after 3 months, because I'm now getting like feeling like I'm menopausal and I feel like I'm getting my period and there's no way, right? I could probably show you a thread of 2 years of very interesting conversations between me and her mom, where the doctors then corroborated everything I said. So, we pick up all this energy and it's not necessarily ours. And when we're in a non functioning state, meaning we do not know what to do with it, we automatically assume it's ours. And the minute we go, my head, oh, I have a headache. Oh man, I have a headache. The minute you say that, you claim it and you
Yeah.
lock it into your body.
Yeah.
Now you have a headache. Now it's your headache. You took it from the person that had the headache. But when you don't do that and you go, wow, what am I in awareness of? Oof, a little pressure here on my head. I wonder what that is. And you start opening it up for a little bit more possibilities of where that energy is coming from or who it belongs to. We don't lock it then in our bodies, and it's easier for us to transmute it or, as I say, return it with consciousness. And I like to return with consciousness and, divine love, we'll say. And so to help people to then be able to work through their own stuff and not me doing all the work for them, so to speak. Yeah. So that's one of the things I think people come to me for, because I do spend a lot of time mentoring my clients. And I always tell them that they're not just going to get a clearing. I'm going to be teaching them, because one of my greatest fears is that people will become very codependent on me. I'm not sure. I haven't worked on that. It would be interesting to see what that's related to. But I do have this, fear that, people are going to become very, very dependent on the work I do. And I love seeing my clients, and I love working with them. I'm so grateful. I have so many amazing, beautiful people that come, every week. And when we're clearing and we're working through whatever their journey, spiritual journey is. But the biggest, most important part of that to me is that I'm also putting tools in their toolbox, and I'm teaching them how to do a daily spiritual maintenance, as I call it, to keep their energy clear. I teach them how to not just ground, but also how to put their barriers down and expand, which I think is the greatest form of protection. Is when we get, and I think that's just because it's death doula and working with spirit energies and crossing people over all the time. I've learned that it's so important to not put all of these, what I'm trying to say is, I was taught in the beginning to protect myself with crystals and wear a cross, a religious symbol, sage, smudge, essential oils, to do all these things. And none of those things were working for me. It was getting worse, right? It was getting more and more intense all the time. And it wasn't until I was taught to just sit in the energy for a minute, but place my barriers down so I can become more aware of what I'm in awareness of, and then expand my energy beyond, like to infinitum. And when you expand your energy out to infinitum, that is the greatest protection. You're bigger than any negative energy. You are so high vibrational at that point, the low vibrations can't find you. So I feel like after a decade of doing this work, I've really become this, as a transmuter of magnitude, I've become like a entity bug zapper. So everywhere I go, I'm just like zap, 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 zap. Like I don't have to do a ton of clearings anymore, because I am the clearing now. And that's what I like to teach my clients, is come and I will teach you some simple, basic things. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, and I'm not going to say it's not going to take some consistency, because it's not a one and done. Right now we want everything to be instant and magical, and, pop a pill and it all goes away. But part of our journey and our learning lesson here is our remembrance. And our remembrance is truly that Rolodex somewhere up in the sky, where we start pulling our files and our gifts and our ancestral stuff, right? Our ancestral gifts to ourselves. And I think that's actually kind of what has occurred with me, because even though I have taken some very specific training, what I've discovered in the last couple of years is all I require to do now is read a book or be inspired by a podcast, or, go on to watch a documentary on certain areas. And suddenly it's like something opens up, and now I can access those tools. Yeah. So I could talk on that for a very long time, but I feel like you have questions. So
it's so interesting what you say, because I do feel like, that we're not here to learn, we're here just to remember, to awaken. And it kind of brings me back, and I've talked about this in other podcasts as well, that I see other lives almost like I saw this image of like a mesh, like a netting, and each of those areas where the netting crosses is another
yes,
life. And then
yes,
all those threads that come down is the threads for the other lives. So that when we're remembering, that information is coming down those threads from the other life where
hmm
you are doing whatever. and then so you're
Hmm.
tapping into that, and that is then coming into this life.
Hmm. Yes, that's absolutely, that's a beautiful example or a visual for your
Mm.
audience. And I do feel very much similar to that explanation. Um, when I had my and I mentioned this to you, this is my first video chat that I've done with anybody, first video podcast since I had my Lyme disease diagnosis 2 years ago. And I had, Cole's Notes version for your audience. I was bit by a spider, not a tick, and went on a very interesting journey. I look back now and I do feel it was a forced vision quest to, I always say things are there for us, not happen for us, not to us. And so this happened to me for a reason. It's been an interesting journey. The first thing that occurred 30 days after the spider bite, even though they treated the infection, they did not know I had Lyme yet, or Babesia and Bartonella from it. And I developed Bell's palsy. So the right side of my face and neck, my tongue was all literally paralyzed. And so this is my first, yeah, I feel like this is a milestone, being able to come back and have a chat and do this and feel comfortable again. It's been a long journey, and through the path of that, I'm now starting to see things moving quicker. Um, I've developed all my abilities that were there prior to that feel heightened. And I was always able during emotion code sessions to see, to sort of see snippets of pictures, or information would come through in sort of video form or audio. I'd hear it.
Yeah.
But after that, what occurred was this, and you were literally describing it, is it's like, again, it got turned up, because I tend to do a lot of past life work, vows, contracts. I have a lot of gifted healers that come that have hit a brick wall, and they're not sure how to move forward in their spiritual practices or their healing practices. And I transmute whatever it is for them. I always had past life things showing up, but now it's like a full on color movie that downloads. Um, and I call it multidimensional karma and quantum entanglement, which is exactly what you just described, right? And now, did I train for that? Well, probably somewhere in another lifetime I did somewhere. But going through this journey that I've just been on back to wellness, I think has helped to open things up in a way that I couldn't even imagine when my illness originally started.
Yeah, it's interesting about emotion code. We're both trained in it, in the classic way. And then all of a sudden, for me, I think it was in 2020, and I think during lockdown, that when I started doing sessions,
Hmm.
something else started happening. And for me, yeah, I started to see if somebody was having, for example, I've got a client who she was frightened of not so much flying, but the journey from a home to the airport. And there'd be so much
Mm.
going on with that. And then I was then given an image, a vision of a pilot in another life, a very specialized pilot who would end up taking the
Mhm.
diplomat. It was this whole massive story.
Oh, wow.
Then I saw that he'd had to transport this diplomat. The plane had crashed. The passenger had died. He was blamed for it. He felt really bad. He lost his reputation of being one of the best pilots in the military. But then, in further sessions, I then had um, the episodes before, so leading up to that, and then the ones after where he had to change his identity and go into hiding. And there was massive. And then other ones where I'm seeing and I think now it's remote viewing, because there's been times when I'm seeing the classical witch hunt stuff and little
Mm.
children in in the
Yeah.
marketplace in medieval times. And a little girl would actually turn around and she stuck her tongue out at me. She looked at me, and I was thinking, oh
Hmm.
my goodness, she knows I'm there. She was doing it directly at me. So it makes me realise, yeah, that we know that it's not past lives, it's lives that are happening around us in parallel lives.
Hmm.
Completely off. Yes, so it's interesting how we're given this tool, And then through that tool, we develop into our gifts. It just expand and expand. I mean, for me, through emotion code, I've seen that there's a waiting room before we come into birth.
Mhm.
There's a decompression chamber that once we die, we go into the decompression chamber. And we talk to people like on emotion code, and they go, "That's not in the training."
Right, exactly. And I hear that all the time. And, from fellow practitioners as they're learning, there's something that seems to awaken when they first read the book, and then they get interested maybe on going on and becoming certified, and follow on in the journey. There's other, body code and belief code as well that they might start dabbling in. But I find that, like any modality, when you lock yourself in the box and you're not willing to move beyond those
Yes.
parameters, you become limited within the parameters. And so my connection to spirit, as I said, began probably even as a child. I know I used to hide, and there was all sorts of things. I don't really remember. I only remember a couple instances where we lived on a very old farmhouse, and I do remember like a couple of visitations in the night that were not very, they were kind of scary when I was a kid. And so I think I kind of shut that part down, and it didn't open back up until, you know um like I say, around 2014, so over 10 years ago now. It really began to dial up. And one of the things that occurred was, I was at the kitchen sink doing dishes, and I don't know what my husband was doing. I think he was just, helping me clean up after supper and putting things away. And the phone rang. And before, I should back up, before the phone rang, about 10 minutes before it rang, I got this pit in my stomach, and it was like it took my breath away. And my husband asked me, well, what's the matter? And I just looked at him and I said, I don't know. Something bad just happened. And so when I first started awakening, I equated it with always bad things happening. That was part of what I had to shift in my thinking, because when the phone rang 10 minutes later, it was news that his uncle had died. And so I had awareness of when he left his body.
Mm.
And that was the feeling, that the retraction or whatever I felt in my body at that time. It took me quite a while to figure it all out, and I did do some training, some very specific training, talk to the entities training, which I think really helped again for me to um, learn how to clear things without judgment. And so I always say, when people first start coming to do sessions with me, that the one thing you're going to hear from me is I'm not going to call anything offensive energies, because I actually find the term, and it's
Yes.
just my interesting point of view, I find the term offensive,
Yes. Totally.
because that's like saying that your mother or your daughter or your grandfather or your uncle who passed away are offensive. It's not offensive energy. These are energy signatures of your loved ones, and they're still around you. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean that the energy that they are now, right? When we leave our body, we are a being. We are a light being. And when we leave the physical body, we go on to do other things.
Mm.
But we do stick around, for a while, to make sure your friends and your family and everybody are okay. And in some cases, if there's undone business, they will never leave. So they can be locked in a holding pattern for a very long time. When I had my first training on how to actually clear entities, which, if I back up a little bit, everything is energy. We know that by quantum physics, which means the chair we're sitting on is energy. The pen I'm holding is energy. But if everything is energy, then that means everything actually is an entity. And so if everything is an entity, that doesn't mean it's good or bad or right or wrong. Doesn't mean it's malevolent or benevolent. It just means it's energy. And it's only until we apply whatever term we want on that, that it will show up that way. So when your grandmother, who's loving and caring and has, been this beautiful, uh, important part of your life, passes on, she doesn't go from being this beautiful energy to all of a sudden being something haunting or malevolent or, harmful. When we leave our bodies, we're no longer embodied. So right now we're embodied entities, but when we leave our bodies, when we pass away, we become disembodied. And if there's undone business, like they didn't get to say something or do something or give you something, they won't leave. And so a lot of my work has to do with connecting to that energy and delivering the message. But it's not like a traditional medium. So last week I had a beautiful client come to my home, and I did a body process on her. And she said that she'd been not feeling well for the last 4 years, but she felt it was PTSD and had to do with stress that occurred, around a traumatic situation. And I asked her what she felt the traumatic situation, if she knew what that was. And she said, yes, it was the passing of her mother. And that as the daughter, she took care of her mother in this 2-year process of her passing with a terminal illness. And then after she passed, there was a lot of chaos that occurred right after. And so she felt like there was something locked up in her body. She had such physical pain, which she described as arthritis, and that, the doctors had done all the tests, didn't know why her knees were so sore, why her body was reacting in this autoimmune response in the way it was. The minute she said, that she thought it was related to her mom, just like Katie in the coma, I felt her mom literally standing by the massage bed. And so as I was gently holding her head and doing the bars process on her, we were talking, and I began to do some additional clearings on her. And I waited until we got to the joy and sadness bar. And because I felt it would be, for her, it would give her the greatest clearing for her physical body. And I presented that her mother was there. And I connected to her mom, and I delivered a message to her. Now, energy is our first language. So if we think about that, we are born with our first language, and then whatever our native tongue is actually our second language. And so everything is about energy. And so I realized very quickly, because I didn't want to be a medium, I did not want to be that. I don't know what I thought that was, but that was one of the reasons I was rejecting my gift, is I didn't want to be that, whatever it was. I don't know. And then I realized when I took my training that, oh, I didn't have to be that it's an energy delivery. So I always say to my clients, I just deliver the gift. Beautiful. I deliver what the message is. I'm like your UPS or I'm not sure, wherever you're listening, the Amazon, right? Drops it on the doorstep. I'm just the delivery person. I don't get to look in the box. Only you get to look in the box. And so when the time is right, you will know that's the message. If they don't automatically get some sort of, image or message while I'm facilitating it, it will come to them when it will open in time. And so I facilitated that with her. And we were both in tears by the end. It was so beautiful. And she got up off the table and she was like, this is the first time in 4 years I have not had physical pain in my body. She messaged me a week later, thanking me again, saying how profound that experience was. And that a week later, she still had no autoimmune pain left. And the inflammation was gone. That it literally was just her mom tugging at her, trying to get her attention so that she could say what she needed to say. And there was an ancestral gift that needed to be passed on, because I do find what happens a lot of times, if you're a healer, starseed, light worker, a gifted empath, we often have those ancestral gifts. And I know in my own family, my mother and my grandmother rejected They rejected their psychic abilities. They rejected their gifts. And I guess I was the next in line. And when I woke up, I began my awakening journey. That's when all of the ancestors realized, my great grandmothers, right? The grandmother, 40, 50 generations, were holding these gifts, waiting literally to hand them to me. And so often what I see is literally a circle of beautiful ancestors, usually grandmothers, handing the gifts to you as I'm facilitating it. And it happens very quickly because it's all energetic. And they've been waiting a long time. And so that's why a lot of clients, when they come, also find that, like emotion code, they will begin to awaken, and suddenly their clairsentient energy, so that emotional mental empathy, they have control of it all of a sudden. Or their clairaudient goes from being tinnitus to them actually being able to hear now. Or the movies start with their clairvoyance. I have one client who became an oracle very quickly, and very gifted oracle, and she can predict the future. Like, I mean, I know she's looking in a ball and she can see it. So I think it's really beautiful to be able to do this work. And so it started out with me crossing people over, and I would often get a call from a friend or a family member saying, mums, I had one that called me and said, grandma's been holding on for a month and the doctors can't figure out why she's holding on, and we don't know what else to do. And she said, I could only think of you, and can you help her? And so I tapped into grandma's energy, and sure enough, there was a specific message for her son. And then I facilitated that, and then there was a message for all her children. There was 4 children, three girls as well, to receive. And I facilitated that, and my friend messaged me in about half an hour after and said, Mom is gone now. So they will hold on until they get to deliver those messages. And it's such an honor. I almost tearing up right now because
Yeah.
there are no words for what I do. There's no words for that experience unless you're able to cross people over and be part of that journey. I know this is a gift from God, and there's only certain people on this earth that have this gift of what I can do. And I really feel a sense of, I'm going to say almost a sense of obligation to do this work now. And a funny story around that, when I did my training, I thought I was so smart. I came home after and I was like, oh, I'm gonna clear all these energies, and I'm gonna clear all the entities and all the ghosts. And I'd spent 3 or 4 days with this in this class, so I thought I had a handle on it. And I came home, and I went to my bedroom where it was quiet, and I was overlooking my, oh, we lost connection there for a second, Nikki.
You're still here.
Um, so I was looking out my bedroom window, and over the grass, over the front, and I decided I was going to clear the energies, all the entities. And so I decided I would count. And so I counted, and there was like 4. And I was like, oh, I found 4 that need to be cleared. And I cleared them, and I felt lighter, and I was like, that's cool. And the next day I decided I'd do that again. And the next day there was 40. And the third day there was 400. And this every day the number went up, and then it was 4,000, and it was like 40,000, and then it was 400,000, and then it was 4 million. And I was like, oh my god, is it ever going to stop? Where are they coming from? Like, I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. And I decided to stop counting because I realized, like you said, it's that quantum entanglement. It was like I was pulling them not just from this reality anymore. I was past lives and future and everywhere. And they were just, they could see me, and they came running, and they were like, oh, she'll clear us. She'll help us. And yeah. So I did spirit hours for a long time, which is what I call it, where I would.
So we had lost Lisa, but there's a reason for that, and I've managed to find Lisa again. And so, Lisa, what
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I guess, me telling that story about all the entities coming in, and I was just about to say, I don't hold regular spirit hours anymore, which is about a 15-minute period of time where I would just sit and just clear energies. I now do that professionally all week long. So I don't find I have to do that. But, I'm known for having these glitches with electronics when there's entities around. So I feel like we should just do an entity clearing here for you and for your listeners, and whoever's listening to this in the future will still be able to receive the entity clearing. And so I'm just going to get everyone just to close your eyes, take a deep breath, whatever feels comfortable. And I'm just going to call all the guides, all the spirits up now. Just join us now. All the entities that requiring to be cleared. And do they have communication? Do they have contributions? Okay, so they just require to be cleared. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to do it silently in my head, but you will feel something, and you will notice me burping and coughing quite a bit as I clear the energies, transmuting it. So let's just invite them to come back. Come forward, come forward, come forward, come forward, come forward. All right, Nikki, what did you feel with that?
That was pretty impressive, because the minute you said you had to close your eyes, you started, felt very heavy, like a very dense energy around me.
I'm still burping. I'm sorry.
Ooh, I've just got goosebumps going all the way down the back of me. This emotion coming up.
Mm-hmm. All right.
There
So,
was a shift.
Nikki, can we sit with that just for a moment? So I'm just going to ask if there is a specific entity here for you. And because we cleared all that just required to be crossed, but I do feel like there's someone special here for you. And I'm going to ask if do we require to know who they are? Okay. But I do feel it's a spirit guide trying to contribute to you. So if you would just place your barriers down for me and open to receiving from your spirit guide now. There we go. There we go. So what did you feel with that?
Peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's usually a very calmness to the body, I find, because we're energy. I always say water is liquid energy in motion, and the more water we drink as spiritual beings, the more in tune we can become with the frequencies. And so yeah, it's a peaceful energy. And as I started to say earlier, I just feel so honored to be able to do this work, because there's no words, is there right now? There's no words in our English language that can really fully express what you just experienced. Love would be the highest vibration and the highest peace. Love usually are what people say, but my awareness is we don't actually have a word to describe it, what actually we're feeling in that moment.
There's still emotion coming up. I just feel really calm from the beginning of this the podcast. I could feel my generator energy before, and it just felt
Mm-hmm.
very, very lively. Now I just feel like I'm just sitting on very still water,
Beautiful.
and
Beautiful.
there's still emotion. Yeah, it's still coming.
Yeah. You're going to integrate that energy for about 4 hours.
Yeah.
So it'll continue to download to you whatever that was your spirit guide was. It was blocked. And so what I did when I coughed and I was burping there was I was shattering whatever was blocking that communication between you and the guide. And the guide was trying to, again, give you something. So you have to let me know sort of what
Yeah.
shifts or changes over the next, couple months. Cause I always say my sessions are the gift that keeps on giving, because you have one session, but you'll ride that wave of the beautiful energy for months. In some cases, people come back and tell me a year or 2 years later, how grateful they are of whatever work we did and how it's impacted them. And it continues to impact them.
I'm so thankful, Lisa, for that. It's just amazing, how that's what happened there. And I just feel like this podcast was so meant to be. I think there's a gift to the both of us in this. You're talking about gifts.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you said this is the first step since I can't get my words out now.
Yeah,
Bell's
my Bell's
palsy.
palsy, yeah, and the Lyme
For
disease.
that, for you to finally be able to tell your story and to be on screen again, and obviously for that just to have happened. So yeah, I'm absolutely truly thankful.
Mhm.
So I'm so glad we got you back.
Well, I was laughing the whole time when it went down because I knew exactly what was going on. It's, as I say, often when there's spirit around us, um, we will have electronic things that are weird. Like one of the things that happens for me is I can't wear a watch of any kind. I can't wear any wearable devices because I literally, as a transmuter, I drain them. I drain the batteries. I literally, with a
Oh,
wristwatch, I kill the batteries very short, very quickly. If it's something that's rechargeable, I would be draining it, beyond what a norm, like I would burn it out basically. My computer, same. My computer, I've had lots of issues with that. And what's really interesting about my Wi-Fi is that I think it was my Wi-Fi that disconnected, and I have fiber optic now. So it's like I got the best Wi-Fi I could because I was constantly finding that, video calls were being dropped or buffering a lot. And that usually would be a sign that there was, an entity energy. Now, with that said, we, if we go back to my definition of entities, um, entities are energy. So I like to say they're contributing or non-contributing. So this we experienced with you was a spirit guide that was here to contribute to you. But there can be non-contributing energy, which is what all that other energy was that I cleared before the spirit guide. That is non-contributing entities. They are just entities who require assistance. They're disincarnates and they need to be crossed over. They are not malevolent or harmful, although they can be pranksters. There can be things that can go on in them attempting to get your attention.
yeah.
Like my client who her mother, was causing that autoimmune response in her body, trying to get her attention, poking at her. I had one client who woke up in the middle of the night with scratches all over her body. Now I could see where somebody would feel like, oh, I'm being haunted by a ghost that's trying to scratch in the middle of the night, right? Scratching my arm. But they figure out how to communicate with you, how to get through. And if that's the only way, because they don't have physical bodies anymore, they can't pick up the phone and call
Right.
you, right? So they have to figure out another way. So for me, when a spirit guide or when there's an angel present, I suddenly start rubbing my nose because it feels like a feather is being tickled right under my nose. Sometimes I get a flapping in my ear, so I know that's when angels are close by. Those are all contributing energies. Non-contributing does not mean malevolent. Although with that said, there is a great percentage of my work where I do deal with the malevolent energies because nobody else seems to be able to transmute them the way I can. So often, especially with the motion code, often I'll end up with a lot of referrals through that circle of friends, right? The practitioners who know that I do this work will end up referring people to me if they come across offensive energies. And that can look that can look very different. Everything from reptilian or draconian energies, which is probably the darkest. You don't want to mess with those ones for sure. To, it could be a fallen fallen angel. It could be, I mean, I have a list, so I could pull my list and it could be one of, 50 different types of energies that are holding on. And sometimes those energies could be cursed on us or hexed in these past life experiences or in the multidimensional karma and quantum entanglements. So some of the things that come through are very interesting. And I feel very blessed that I can also clear those darker, heavier energies, especially when we're going into things like addictions. Like when someone has an addiction to something, and it doesn't matter whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex addiction or food addiction or hoarding, those are all a form of addiction. There will be an addictions entity there that
Mm.
requires to be cleared. So, if you go out to, let's say, a public place like a bar, those entities are literally sitting right outside the bar waiting for somebody
Yeah.
who is no longer in their consciousness. So anything that takes us out of our consciousness, drugs, alcohol, could be prescription medication, anything that takes you out of your consciousness, um, opens you up for those more malevolent, darker energies. But
Okay.
again, with that, the biggest reason there is or at least in my experience, when I've come across some of these, I like to say what they are: demons, the demon energy. So we have entities and we have demons, and demons are nothing more than an entity that's been given a job, and they're really good at their job, and they never leave their job post until they're fired. But who fires them? Nobody fires them. You know, you could have lived reincarnated thousands of times, but that one lifetime you hired a demon to protect you from something, and it's still locked in, and now you wonder why you can't overcome a hurdle or something in your life now. um Relationships as an example. Maybe you said in another lifetime, I'm never going to marry a man like that ever again. Never going to do that again. I can't, I won't, I'm not going to do that. Guess what? Demon, demon, demon. You hired them, you locked them in. So we tend to be the ones who are cursing ourselves sometimes, and we
Mm.
don't even realize we're doing it.
Wow, Lisa, we could talk for hours. I'm going to have to get you back on for another
Yes, I
session.
would love that. I would
Yeah,
love that. It would be fun
yeah,
to do, maybe even talk about very specific topics and dive into them a little
yeah.
deeper.
I
But
think so.
yeah.
You've got so much to talk about. So, just to close off, so I always ask, the same questions to all my guests. The first one is: did you have a dream when you were young? Is there something that you really
Did I
want
have a
to do or
dream?
to do? Yeah.
Oh, it's when you asked me that question before, I was like, oh, that's interesting, because it kind of, I had to go back, right, and think about that. And yeah, when I was young, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to work with animals. Isn't that interesting? I
Mm.
mean, I do have pets, but I certainly, what I do is far from from doing that now. Yeah.
I think, I said there's another podcast that somebody, I don't want to be a doctor or a vet. I think as healers, we always go for these caring professions because we know it's
Hmm.
almost like I have this image of like our blueprint. Like we have an image of, okay, what we're going to be. We're going to be a healer, but that can be then we interpret that in this life as, oh, a doctor or a vet or a nurse. We get pulled into those, but then we realise later in life that's not it. But it's the healing
Hmm.
aspect that we're after. So yeah,
Hmm.
totally how that came through. And
Hmm.
so, how would you say to people? I mean, we're going through so much, transformation and changes right now, and it can be such a worrying place for so many people.
Hmm.
What advice would you give?
Well, I have observed that the dial is turning up on the intensity right now, and more
Yeah,
people are awakening very quickly. It used to be we're kind of awaken in waves, and I jokingly say to my girlfriend, who experienced her awakening around the same time as myself, is we had the luxury of the last decade to find ourselves and figure it all out. But today I feel like people are going from zero to Mach
yes,
5 with their hair on fire in their awakening process. And so my advice would be to you really require to figure out your own intuition. Your internal guidance system will never, ever steer you wrong. And I think that's why when we start emotion code, that's one of the things we begin when we're muscle testing, sway
Yes.
testing, or whatever method you're using. We begin to really get connected to our higher self, and we start to
Yeah.
ground and
Very much.
connect into, we start to connect into that GPS that we have internally. And
That's so
I think I
cool.
lost you again.
I can still hear you. Can you see me?
Okay, we'll keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah, so I would say learn what you're in, learn your intuition. Become familiar with the clairs and figure out which are your gifts, and do spiritual maintenance every day. It's just like brushing your teeth. You get up every day and maybe you shower and brush your teeth every day. Well, you wouldn't go a week without showering, or at least we hope you don't. You wouldn't go a week without brushing your teeth. And that's what I think is really important in the beginning when you're awakening, is that you require to sit in your own energies. And in order to do that, the spiritual daily maintenance is required.
Fabulous. Thank you for that. And then one last question. A surprising fact about you. Something surprising about you.
Surprising fact. Oh my goodness.
You've had so many. You're a box of surprises.
That's a hard one. I don't know. I don't know. I was like, what should I say to that? I mean, I could give you some funny anecdotes. Like, I have more socks and slippers strewn all over the house than probably anybody because I have very sweaty feet, which I think has something to do with energy. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's really a fun one, is it? I don't know. I'm a gardener. I love to garden. So I think that's a surprising fact that I really like. I think I have a very strong connection to earth. And so, yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
gardener. I don't know what else to say.
It's very grounded, isn't it? It brings you straight back into earth, really, from dealing with, the spirit. It's totally logical. Wonderful. Are you losing me again, I think? Yeah. So I think we're going to
Sorry,
sign
I
off
keep
because
I keep
maybe
buffering. I think we're there.
yeah,
We are. I
there's
think we're
something else
buffering a little
happening.
bit again, Nikki. And so
Yeah.
I would just say, I just want to say thank you again for you inviting me to do this with you. And I do hope to see you again, and that your listeners found value in not only your podcast, but what I had to share today.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure they will have. Lisa, it's been such a pleasure. It's been a real gift having you on here, and also thank you as well for the clearing. And yeah, I'm pretty well sure that the people listening, that's little Gaia. She's running around like crazy, our little nature's
Yeah.
kitten.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that listeners are going to reap so much from what you said. It's been a really, really interesting podcast, and I'd love to have you back on for sure.
Well, I
Yeah.
look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. Take care. Stay on the line for a couple of minutes. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Bye now.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found inspiration, tools, and a touch of magic to support your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. And if you'd like to dive deeper, visit my website at nikkihoward.com, where you can learn about my upcoming membership, the Enchanter Sanctuary, a community for like-minded souls just like you, full of tools, creativity, and guidance to help you clear the path back to your true self. Until next time, take care of yourself, trust your path, and remember you are never alone on this journey.